Welcome to Season 8 of the Charity Matters podcast. I'm Heidi Johnson, nonprofit founder, lifelong helper, and your host. I've been interviewing modern-day heroes for over a decade with my blog, and I'm so excited to be sharing these inspiring conversations with our podcast. Join me as we learn the challenges and stories of innovators, entrepreneurs, and modern-day heroes who set out to solve the problems of humanity. The greatest gift one can give the world is a life well lived. And some of our lives are long, and some of our lives are incredibly short. And today's guest, Mary Fagnano, knows this incredibly well. And I'm so excited to share her inspirational and incredible story about what she's doing to make a difference in the world with the Thrive and Joy Nick Fagnano Foundation. You're not going to want to miss this. I'm so excited to have Mary Fagnano joining us today of the Thrive and Joy, the Nick Fagnano Foundation. Welcome, Mary. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Heidi, for having me. I equally am so excited to be talking with you.
Well, it's just great. And I love finding my people, and I know a little about your story, and you are my people. I already know that. So before we dive into everything, can we just share with the audience about what your foundation does, what Thrive and Joy Nick Fagnano Foundation does? Can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Sure. I mean, our mission.
Yes.
Started, you have to have a mission when
Yes,
you
you
start a
do.
nonprofit. And we tweaked it a couple times, but where we are right now with it is that at the Thrive and Joy Nick Fagnano Foundation, we encourage young people to discover their character strengths and the joy of service through programs inspired by the life of our son, Nick Fagnano.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. So I'm going to ask before we get into everything about Nick, because we're definitely going to talk about Nick, which is why we're here, and which is so fantastic and not. Tell me a little bit about like your early volunteering. Did you grow up with a family that kind of modeled giving back? I always love to know where the seed of giving back came from, because I know that people don't wake up and start nonprofits. I know something happens, but there's a lot of things that happen before that. So talk to me a little bit about kind of your early role models or what you were doing before all of this.
It's such a good question, and it's something that I thought about because, I'd had a chance to look at some of the topics that we might be discussing, and it made me think about things I hadn't thought about before. So my mom was, she volunteered a lot in school, and she was a drama and speech and drama background and also music. So she would go into schools and do creative dramatics and music, and I would tag along with her sometimes on those early, days. My father was always volunteering. He was always at the church. He ran the Christmas tree sale. He, he adopted a family from Afghanistan that like our church, kind of sponsored. And he took this family on camping trips and just,
Oh, beautiful.
brought them into our family. And so I did grow up seeing my parents doing outreach and giving of themselves. In my own life, I look back and I say, was I really philanthropic? Was I involved in volunteering? And thinking about that, the first thing I remember is when I moved to Los Angeles and I was trying to meet people. I moved here from San Francisco for a job transfer. And the church I was going to had a program where you could go to juvenile hall and you could volunteer and talk to, young people who were incarcerated.
Right.
And I did that. And it was a really powerful experience. It was the first time in my life that I had really put myself out there, and don't ask me why this volunteering at juvenile hall was something that drew
Right.
pulled
That's
at my heart,
amazing.
but I did, and it was an amazing experience. And then you get busy
Yeah,
and
life happens.
go on. Um,
But that's incredible. I
so
mean, I really do think that we don't always think about who kind of, I don't know, seeded the path for us or planted, those little seeds of somewhere we were shown this or somewhere. I do think innately we are kind and good. I do believe that. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. But I think when we have these role models, it does end up coming back to us. And when there's a time when we need it, we don't realize we need it, but we need it. It's somehow it's there. We pull from it, and I think that that's pretty remarkable. So I've been interviewing nonprofit founders for 14 years. I've interviewed, I think, thousands. I haven't even counted, but hundreds at minimum, a lot. And I would say 95% of the people I've interviewed have had a tragedy or a loss that inspired them to make sure that doesn't happen to the next person or to honor someone. And 5% have kind of had like a near miss moment of such gratitude that they feel compelled to do something. When I started a nonprofit in 2002, it was because my parents were in a horrible accident and my mom was hit by a bus and my parents' friends were killed. My mother was killed. And it was like that blink moment that everything changes. Um, but, bad things happen all the time. And not everybody takes that pain and recycles it into something good and beautiful. But it is a unique trait that nonprofit founders have. So, why don't you share kind of your journey and moment with everyone about how you got here? Because there's a moment and everyone knows when it is, and it defines your life and it changes everything. But out of that loss is always a rebirth. And being an Angelino, and you're an adopted Angelino, you're an Angelino, you've been here a long time. We don't have an earthquake without a new city, right? It's just it's the cycle of life. So why don't you share a little bit of your journey?
Sure. Well, my journey started the day Nick was born. And um, he was just an amazing every year of his life. And we all say that about our kids. I know that. I mean,
Not always.
well, I would say you can't take blame for things that your kids do, nor
Right.
can you take credit for
Correct.
what they do. They
Right.
are their own
They are
people.
who they are.
They
Right.
really are. And just Nick, but Nick always inspired me. He always inspired me to be a better person.
Beautiful.
And he was the one, like when I was in my working world, and he did this baseball equipment drive for kids in the Dominican Republic when he was going from little league into high school. He loved baseball, and he had rallied his friends, and he saw something on TV about how kids in the DR love baseball but can't afford the proper equipment, and he put this drive together. And I was like, wow, Nick, that's amazing you're doing
Right.
that. And another influence in my nonprofit journey was this guy named Greg Busak, who I was in the advertising and marketing world, and he had started an organization that brought executives together for a common good to help vulnerable children around the world. And they would make these service trips, and you'd get retailers and executives in the technology industry who would go to the Dominican Republic and work at an orphanage.
Wow.
And that just, I felt like my work it was a very good, lucrative job that I had,
Right.
but I wasn't finding like great personal fulfillment in it. And
Right.
when I met Greg, it's like, wow, this gives another layer of meaning to my work. And I can use our magazine to promote what Greg is doing with his organization. And I got involved, I would say, in nonprofit philanthropy, later in life. And then inspired by Nick doing that drive to
Right.
the Dominican Republic, I was like, we're gonna go to the Dominican Republic, Nick, you and me, someday, so you
Uh,
can see
right.
how, you help these kids, like
Oh,
not
this
the
is
same
so great.
kids, but
Right. Right.
and so when Nick passed, Greg remembered that I had said that we were gonna go to the Dominican Republic.
Wow.
And he said, maybe we've got this trip coming up. We're going to install a computer lab at this school. And maybe you and Jay would want to go on this trip because you never went with Nick.
Right.
And I could tell you so many stories
Oh,
about
well,
that
the
trip.
signs that happen that lead us. I don't know about you, but I don't believe in coincidences.
We always say there are no
There
coincidences.
are no coincidences. We are being guided on where we're supposed to be going, and when those doors open and those crazy, phone calls or opportunities present themselves, they're not they're
Right.
not crazy. They're the sign that we're on the right path, that we're supposed to be doing what.
Even when that phone call from Greg came, I was having this moment. It was only about 4 or 5 weeks after we'd lost Nick,
Ugh.
and I was having this moment.
And how old was Nick?
He was
7?
20.
20.
Yeah.
Huh.
And it was just like, "Nick, I need to feel you. I need to know you're here." And in that moment, my phone rings, and had it been anyone else,
Right?
maybe my mom, anybody else besides Greg Buzak, I wouldn't
You
have
would.
answered that call.
Right.
When I saw him, it's like, "Okay, yeah."
It's right?
And it
It's
was
just.
that call that really changed our life and started Jay and I to have a purpose.
And did you go on the trip, and did it kind of inspire what can we do? And it just kinda got the wheels turning from that moment?
Totally, totally. There were just so many signs on that trip that Nick wanted us there. And
I
then we
I
thought it
believe
was
that
one of we
with every
really
fiber of my being, and I've lived it, and I know.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
right? And I'm not trying to put a shameless plug in for my book, but there's a whole chapter on signs in my book because I just wrote a book called Change for Good, and that's part of the journey is and seeing them and knowing that somehow they're a clue to something that it's something important, you just don't know. You can't piece it all together. It's like a puzzle and
Right.
you're getting a piece.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
It's really, but and when you start going the right direction, doors just start opening. Starting things is always fun and exciting, but it's hard also because I mean, for me, my mom had been gone a year when I ended up starting a nonprofit at Children's Hospital,
Mhm.
um, to provide chaplains of all faiths. And I was running on empty and I'm grieving. And it was not a child, it was my mother. I mean, grief is grief, but child
Mm.
is a whole other level. And I remember thinking, I'm empty. I have nothing to give. How can I do this? How can I grieve and give when I'm empty? There's no way. And yet, every time I did something towards this goal of creating this nonprofit, my cup started filling up.
It starts to fill you up.
It's the
Yes,
craziest thing, right?
yes,
So talk to me about the challenges. Like, so you go on the trip and you make a decision, we're going to do something.
yeah.
So what were some of those early challenges when you were like, okay, we're going to do something, but then what?
It was there weren't a lot of challenges because I just was so committed and I knew I had to do it.
Right.
I mean, I guess the challenge was just being open because at any given time I could say, whoa, whoa, what this isn't
Right.
like I have this job and
And you were still working?
oh yeah, I was
Oh,
still
wow.
working. And
That's so hard.
there was I mean, so many like we came back from that trip. We remodeled one, we did an extreme makeover in one classroom at this school. Our intention was we're going to do all 10 classrooms. On this one trip, we
Right.
something said, okay, we're going to come back and do all 10 classrooms. And
Wow.
the people running the school are like, yeah, right.
Like,
You
right.
people come here and you make one classroom happy and you make the rest of the school feel bad because their classrooms still look
Right.
terrible. And yeah, right, we'll see you again. And we were just determined, no, we knew there was something that just told us we can do this. And we came back and we had a fundraiser and we did have a great community from our school, next school, our church, our community, our neighborhood.
Right.
So we raised $30,000
Oh,
and we
wow.
were
Were
able
you
to,
guys in the South Bay or?
we were in the kind of Hancock Park
Oh,
area.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, from that moment on, when everybody just kind of wrapped their arms around us and said, we want to support you. And of course, it was that everybody was grieving with us.
People
So
wanted,
they
right,
felt
be
there
a
was
part of
something
something.
they could
Right.
do.
Of course.
But so then the challenges were, okay, now we've done this. Now we have to adjust our lives, I guess, and figure out. And that path led to me quitting my job. We
Wow.
also had USC. Nick was 2 weeks away from starting at USC. And
I'm a Trojan, fight on.
right on. And so s- people wanted to know right when Nick passed. And of course, we had no idea this DR thing was going to happen. And so we said, Nick was a transfer student. There were no scholarships for transfer students. So we thought, well, one student might get one transfer student could possibly get a scholarship if we say to people in Nick's memory,
Right.
you could do this. Turned out to become an endowment at the Price School of Public Policy.
Oh,
And through that and meeting the people in the development area, and I was starting to get those seeds of, I want to be in a world where I can give back every day. And
right.
this was so rewarding to be in the DR.
Right.
But I still needed to work. And so I ended up getting a job with USC that was a series of jobs. Every time someone in a development office went out on maternity leave, I would fill in for them.
Oh, great.
And so while I was, because my other job required a lot of travel and it was super demanding, and this was more of a 9 to 5. So
Right.
I could come home and I still had energy at night to devote to
Right.
developing the nonprofit. From there, I actually got an offer to become the development director at the Hope Street Margolis Family Center, which is part of Dignity Health's family services in downtown LA.
Wow.
And I did
You were
that.
moving through the ranks pretty quick.
I was just, it was like I knew that if I was really going to legitimately start a nonprofit, I better get experience. And I
Right.
was actually so fulfilled at Hope Street, I didn't necessarily think I was going to leave, but it was a very demanding job and I knew I still wanted Thriving Joy to
Welcome to
be
the world of
something.
nonprofits.
Exactly.
Well, there's
So
so many challenges. I mean, the business model is innately flawed. When you have a business that you come from corporate America, I was in the software business, long back when it was in boxes, dating myself and on shelves. But the business model of relying on the kindness of other people is a hard business model. It's
oh,
it's it's has a lot of challenges. So it doesn't make it easy. Being an entrepreneur is hard enough.
right.
Being an entrepreneur that has to ask people for money is really
Small
hard.
when you're small.
Well, and everyone starts out small.
Yeah.
Everyone does, right? There's 1.6 million nonprofits in the United States. We have almost 50,000 in Los Angeles, and they're not all Red Cross,
Exactly.
right?
Yes. Yes.
So you went to work for the nonprofit for the Hope Street, and then what year did you decide to start the
Well,
foundation?
the foundation started in 2016. So we got our 501(c)(3) in 2016. And we had a board and we were at that time only focused on this little project in the Dominican Republic and
Right.
helping out at an orphanage in a school and taking 2 trips a year to go there and do work. And then the board said to us, this is great. You're doing this in the DR, and we've seen how this has really been something that's helped you keep Nick's memory alive and
Right.
been helpful to you. But if we're really going to be a legitimate nonprofit and we want to have sustainability, we need to look local and we need to find something local that we can do. And we were realizing that, like, if you're going to
Which I
write
love
grants,
because
yeah.
I think that the world is small, but if everyone took care of their own community, the world would be the old school way when you took care of your village and your tribe, right? If we just did that,
Mhm.
no one would have to be going other places, right? We could just take care of our own tribe and all would be well.
Right.
So I do really believe in taking care of your community and doing things where you are. I think that that's really great. Not that Dominican Republic isn't great, but I think that that's really
Right. And it was, again, connected to Nick, as is this other dimension that has taken on a life of its own. And that's probably where the biggest challenges are, because we see so much. We can definitely manage our DR project, and we have a couple
right.
donors that really want to support that in a big way. And so we don't have to take money away from the DR
Right.
to grow where we think we have the biggest opportunity to grow. And that is with the C11 program. That's the Strength of Character program we're doing now.
And so it's based on 11 characteristics or character strengths,
Character traits, right?
traits that
Yeah.
Nick possessed, which I love. I work with Catholic schools and I work with hundreds of them for my youth leadership organization. And so they get character a little bit. We do leadership formation, youth leadership formation, which is character building in
Yes.
different, coming at it from a different way. But there's such a, I see, and I've been doing it for since 2013, working with schools and kids. There's such a need. There's such a void, and social media has been the devil for our children. And seeing kids seeing the best in themselves and each other is one of the greatest gifts of why I do my day job, which some days I knock my head against a wall, but seeing these kids and I'm sure you have the exact same experience.
Yes. Yes.
It's remarkable. So you decide, okay, the board says we're going to do this. We're going to go into schools. We're going to
No, the
have
board just said, the board
let's do
just said,
something
got to
here.
do something local. So we had a retreat to figure out what it was going to be.
Right.
And there was a gentleman that I had met who was a keynote speaker at a Dignity Health Philanthropy conference I had just attended. I did a crazy thing and like reached out to him 2 days, no, the day before. There's another whole story there. Again, no
Right.
coincidences. He's a strategic advisor. He's just a brilliant thinker. Ramsey J. Jr. He ended up coming to our retreat the next day. I asked him that night. He came to our retreat the next day and facilitated this discussion around where we were going to go. We didn't know.
Brilliant. Wow.
And what he started saying is, tell me about Nick. And so he started writing all these words that people were, because everybody on our board at that time were friends.
Right.
We
Right.
started out
They
with a
knew.
small
Right. They knew.
nonprofit, it's all
Right.
your
Of course.
friends.
That's how it starts.
Yeah.
Your village.
And
It's your
so
tribe.
he had all these words that describe Nick. And he said, here's your program. He goes, young people need real role models, not
Mhm.
celebrities, not social media, they just
Right.
need real role models.
Yeah.
And then
True.
he said something very poignant and funny, but also like he felt free to say it. He goes, and Nick can't screw it up,
Yeah. True.
because this is the
Right.
life he lived. This is the
Right.
legacy he left.
Right.
And so we took this and then kind of looked and did some background research and found this Values in Action organization. And we aligned the descriptive words of Nick against 24 character strengths that Values in Action defines through their scientific studies. And
Wow.
they have a survey that every student can take, every adult can take. So there's an under 18 version and then 18 and older version, where you take the survey and it gives you this lineup of your top 10 character strengths, and then all the
So
other
cool.
strengths that line up underneath that up to the 24th. And
You need to
so,
send that to me, Mary. I need that. That
oh
sounds
yes,
amazing.
I'm happy to do it. It's so
Yes.
great. And so this is where we realized, okay, we do have something here. And then we worked with a documentary filmmaker who created some content for us and started out with a youth leadership organization and did workshops. And then one of the teachers saw, how the impact that it had on her students at the workshop, and asked if we could bring it to her school. And then it's just
Isn't that just how it always goes? I always say, like, when we started spiritual care, we're like, we're just if we can just help one family have a chaplain at their bedside, just one, if just one family is life is better and has someone at the moment, then we've done our work. And next thing you know, like you're setting the bar because we're our own best and worst enemies because we start creating these. And next thing you know, we're like, how many schools are we working with? How many people are we serving? How many kids? I mean, it's just I
right.
I live it, I see it, I breathe it, and it's just the nature of the nonprofit space and being an entrepreneur for that matter, because we're entrepreneurs at the end of the day. We're
Exactly.
starting businesses that are helping humanity, but we are doing that. So
Exactly.
talk to me about what fuels you because, you're still living a life. We still have laundry like everybody else, but we're juggling different things. We're not manufacturing, widgets or making so many things at the end of the day that we can just leave that when we go home at night. We have people we're serving. We have kids that are counting us. We see what kids are struggling with. And when we go home, you can't just take those people off your back. They come home with you. They
Exactly.
are with you and you carry them and they become like yours. And it's hard. It's really hard some days. So what fuels you when it's a lot?
Well, you said it. It is the people. It's the people we're serving and the people who serve alongside of us too, because no nonprofit can operate without volunteers.
Correct.
But it's the stories. So it's Chris Bell in the Dominican Republic who is part of this youth organization that we partner with whenever we go there. And it's called Casa Misionera. And it's a young adult leadership group. And we team up with their director, Nelson Paulino. And so our teams work alongside of these young people in the Dominican Republic. And Chris Bell was in charge of a project that our team came to her community and we were going to work with her on this project. And it was a difficult day. And I could see that Chris Bell was having a really difficult moment. And I went over to her and I just kind of put my arms around her and I said, "Are you okay?" And she broke down in tears. And we're like, "Service is hard, isn't it?" She goes, "It's really hard. And
Really
I
hard.
feel like
It
I'm all
is.
alone in this. Everybody wanted me to be responsible, and I thought I could be, and it's not going the way I wanted it to." I'm like, "Stop right there. We're all here to support each other."
Right.
Then Chris Bell has become a dear, dear friend of ours, and she just completed this 3-year leadership training program in the Dominican Republic, and she is our advisor to a school
Oh, that's
in
so great.
Nagua that's running
Isn't
our
it?
C11 program. So
It's
seeing
h
her
Yeah,
grow and do that.
and it's hard, right? And we have to fill our own cup to take care of everybody else, and that's hard too because when you get into the mode of being a caretaker, which is kind of what we are in a much bigger way, we're taking care of a lot of things, um, you don't also remember to put your mask on first, you're thinking about everyone else, and then it's hard. So talk to me about what some of the successes have been. Some of the things you guys have and I have this love-hate relationship with the word impact. I hate it when I'm writing a grant. I hate it when I'm trying to measure you're measuring character, I'm measuring leadership. How do you measure love? How do you measure these
All those
things? They're
intangibles.
impossible and I just want to throw the computer out the window and scream and say, "Who are you inhumane people asking these questions that have no humanity when we're solving the problems of humanity? Don't
Right.
ask me to measure this." But yet it's great to stop and see for us especially who are always go 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 to stop and say, "Okay, what have we accomplished here?"
Right.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So tell me how you kind of measure impact and what that looks like for you.
So for us, our impact is what happens through the young people that are part of our program. So I'll talk about impact right now with our C11 program. And earlier you'd mentioned entrepreneurial, that we're in this entrepreneurial kind of world with our nonprofits. And what we want the young people involved in our program to experience is what it's like. And we call it, their project is called an ESIP. and it stands for Entrepreneurial Social Impact Project.
Oh, I love that.
And at each school where we start with these foundational kind of modules to get that handle on character, and then we do a lot of fun activities that are involving character but de-stress. They're geared towards high school students. They're geared towards team building and bonding and, just getting out, the stress of the day. We do
Right.
reflections and grows and glows and weekly wisdoms, and then they start to plan these ESIPs. And every year in the spring, they have to produce an ESIP. And it's what they produce and how they've grown and activated their entire campus that is what gives me such impact of knowing that this group of students, it started out with a little leadership team, and then they recruited a club. So now they've got like 30 members. And then those 30 members had this positive impact on their entire campus with discussions on body positivity, on men's mental health. We had Danny Trejo as our keynote speaker
Oh,
at
wow.
one of the schools last year, where the students felt like they really wanted to tackle this issue of young men's mental health. They were seeing a lot of young men struggling on a lot of different
That's
issues,
real.
especially Latino, because we're in low-income communities and we're serving primarily students that are coming from, mostly in LA area that we're in, South Central. Well, not so much South Central, just South LA, not
Right.
Central, but East LA and South LA. So mostly Hispanic households and so giving the voice to these young people that can talk about things that they're concerned. Another ESIP was last year, it was on safety and security. And the students brought together community resources and they invited their whole campus and everybody could talk to these different organizations. It was everything from financial security to safety riding public transportation to
Brilliant.
health safety. And these are the students' ideas. They come up with this and they do it. So when
Right.
I
And
measure the impact, I count how many, people did this small group of students bring together. We just gave them the platform. And we look at it as we're a nonprofit, but each school that we partner with creates its own little mini nonprofit and picks a cause they believe in, as long as it aligns with Nick's values
right.
and what were things that were important to Nick.
Well, I mean, that is amazing, and I think running a youth leadership organization for the past, whatever it is, 13 years, um, they can do it. If you give them people say, "Oh, kids today, all they're doing is they're on their phones." They don't necessarily wanna be on their phones. They wanna be connected with one another. If you give them the toolkit and say, "Go," and you give it to them in a fun, dynamic way that they can learn, that's exciting to them.
Mhm.
Our kids, we're peer to peer. So we have, college kids teaching high school kids and high school kids
So do
teaching middle
we.
school kids. Yeah. So we're peer to peer. We're 42 years old. And we work primarily with Catholic schools, but we see our kids, they teach with TikTok and, music and YouTube and all these things that I would never teach that information that way, but they teach it in a relatable, fun way. And
Mhm.
these kids run with it, and I have incredible hope and faith for this next generation because I see it and you see it, and I
Yeah,
think it's important for our listeners and other people to realize that these kids are really incredible, and
yeah.
they think very differently than we think.
Very differently.
Very differently, but
I learn so much every day from them.
right? But
Yeah.
it's incredible when you see them and how passionate they are about actually connecting. And once you give them, it's kind of like you give them jet fuel, like they're little rockets ready to take off and they just need someone to light their match. And once you light it, they just go.
Yeah,
And
it is
it's a beautiful
truly.
thing to see. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing to see. So what's the big dream for the foundation? Because you can't be an entrepreneur without a dream, without a vision. So what's the big dream?
It's so hard because you
The
want to
goalpost
separate.
moves every year, right?
Yeah,
So
well, you want to separate the dream. There's the dream where you want to go, and there's the dream for how you're going to get there.
well, yeah, I know. They're two different
So
things
I'll
for
take the
sure.
dream for where we want to go.
Okay.
And I would say that again, because we have the kind of two components to what we do, and they're separate, but then we see that the C11 program can operate anywhere in the world.
Right.
So I would like to see the C11 program go global. That would be the big dream.
Okay.
And we
Beautiful.
already have two volunteers they're consultants who volunteered their time with us when we were developing things about 2 years ago to standardize what we were doing in the schools.
Right.
They travel to these different countries. They're just like serial volunteers and love to travel
Fantastic.
and do social impact work when they travel.
Right.
So they're now going to take C11 to India, to a
Oh,
school in
wow.
India, and they're going to take it to a school, I think, in Peru. So
You're on your way.
I want to see that just continue, that everybody who wants to have this C11 program, every school who feels that there's a value to this in their school, that we can provide it, and that we're constantly able to improve it and update it and make it more exciting and more
Right.
engaging and use different forms of media.
'Cause these kids
That
learn in such totally different, amazing ways. And it's just, it's interesting and it stretches us on the other side of it to keep up with the way that they're learning to be presenting things in ways they want to learn it, that they can digest it. It's like
Yeah,
giving them a meal in a way they can digest it.
yeah.
And and it's sometimes you've got to change the ingredients every once in a while to make sure that it's digestible.
Right. You come at it from we have I think the foundational, like how the students, we have this vision of how this can have an impact on them. But they, I think, have a vision on how they want to engage with it. And
Right.
so getting it into, content that just continues to make it even more compelling to be engaged with is,
It's so amazing.
yeah,
So do you have a motto or a phrase that you live by?
I do. And I think about this almost every day. If you embrace the wisdom of uncertainty, your life will be filled with possibility and creativity.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Mary. That I love that. I have tingles everywhere.
And it's
That's
Deepak
beautiful.
Chopra. And
Beautiful.
it's, I mean, I'm a Catholic. I get a lot of my faith and inspiration, from scripture and the Bible. But there's, something about this that when I read it,
Beautiful.
my life there's nothing, we all know there's nothing.
Nothing is certain except we're not getting out of here alive. That's the only thing that's certain. We're all leaving and we're only here for a short time. And some of us less than others. Nick had a short visit, but it was obviously hugely impactful.
Mhm.
And my mom was 60 when she was, hit by a bus. So it 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 just is.
Yeah.
It just is. It's just different journeys, but there's so many things that we learn from the gift of a short journey. And I always say, the greatest gift one could give the world is a life well lived. And my mother lived with enormous joy and had just a beautiful, full life. And obviously, Nick did the same. But they taught us so many lessons in leaving, in the grief and in the loss, and in our own rebirths, and healing through helping other people. We learned so much about living and what's important, and there's so many lessons. And I say this, and I don't mean to be cheeky about it, but I think it's so true. I think of like the Harry Met Sally movie, and Meg Ryan's like, I want that, and the gal's like, I want what she's having. But I feel like we end up, and you have the title in your foundation's name, we end up with joy when we serve, and I feel like we carry something special that's a result of our loss, but the craziest thing, we end up with this gift out of it, right?
I know.
And yet there's so many beautiful lessons that other people, they look to us, they're like, "Well, I want what she's having." I like, how did you do that?" And we didn't just do this, we went through a lot to get
Right.
here. It was not like we just showed up smiling. Um, but I think there's a lot of lessons for people and how to live. So what are some of the big lessons that you've learned in all of this since losing Nick and going down this incredible journey?
Yeah. I would say the biggest lesson that I've learned is never to take a day for granted. Every day is precious.
Amen.
Every relationship that is important to you is precious. Um, there's never enough hours in the day, and you can't beat yourself up about that.
Mm-mm.
You try to get in everything you can in a day, but as late, I one of the lessons I learned is I don't need as much sleep as I thought I did.
I was up at 12:30 last night getting my podcast posted for today, and I was like, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." Yeah,
But we just have to go through life knowing that, well, having a purpose, like, for me, when our, videographer was doing kind of these videos and interviewing Jay and myself about my husband, Jay, and, who's been by my side through all of this, and that's another thing I'm
blessing.
really grateful for.
Right.
But, she captured this thing that I said, and I didn't even know I said it until I watched the video, and I said, "I don't wanna live an easy life, I wanna live a meaningful life."
You have that on your website, and it's beautiful. It really
Yeah,
struck me, and
so
it's such a gift, and I think we so often we go through life just checklist, check, 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 but we're not living, and I've been talking a lot, um, with the because of the book, I've been doing a lot of speaking and thinking and reflecting and really, if we reverse engineer our lives from our funerals on and not and I don't care what people say at my funeral. I don't do this and you don't do this for what anybody says. It has nothing to do with that. But what people talk about is exactly what you're teaching. They talk about your character. They talk about how Nick lived. They talk about what the legacy was, the gift that he's continuing to provide to all of these children through his example and his in living. And we go through these lives and then they're over in very short time sometimes. And how did you live?
right,
How did you live? And really, how did you give? How did you show that you loved and cared about people? And that's really what, at the end of the day, why we're here,
exactly, exactly.
right? It's like the whole reason. And people are going to therapists and all these self-help things and buying these books. And I'm like, it isn't that complicated.
Right,
Help somebody else and everything will fall into place. It's
yeah.
just, it isn't that simple, but it kind of is.
But it can be small, you don't have to start a nonprofit, you don't have to even
Correct.
volunteer, sometimes it's
Right?
just a family member who needs you, or it
Exactly.
can be somebody that you just who's comes across your path, and
Right? Exactly. And I think that really is, the message that I hope to spread. That's what I try to do in my spare time, is to get that message out because it's the same message that you're giving as well. So tell me how you've changed in this journey. Do you think you're the same person that you were before
oh,
all this?
no, not at all. I mean, inside, yes, probably, the very core of me.
Right.
The people say when you have a child, it changes your life. When you lose a child, it changes your life.
Absolutely.
And I have changed by caring a lot more about a lot of things that I think are more long lasting than the things that I cared about before.
Right.
Nick was only always number one, and being able to know that what I was doing, what Jay was doing, we had a great family dynamic and just
Right.
such a wonderful growing up, everything about being a parent for both Jay and I, and
Wow.
it was great. And so losing that and
Right.
losing all of that purpose and being able to find a different way to channel it and to be like just building very close relationships with strangers, not
Isn't it
people
crazy
that,
how many people come into your world?
yes,
Just like, what?
our life is just so full of, and then it's important, like, I don't want to just go away from all those dear old friends. And you can do
Right.
that. You can get so caught up in your mission and your work that you stop making time for
Yeah.
those other people that have been with you on this journey and
I needed to hear that
recognizing that
today. Yes.
everybody else misses Nick
Right.
as well. And
Right.
so, it's not just like, follow me over here. I have to remember to meet our friends and what's important to them, their lives,
Right.
not just
Right.
because my life has changed and I've taken on this, you know, big, it continues to grow, this
But it's a beautiful, beautiful mission and legacy. I mean, what a tribute. And I just love Thrive and Joy. I mean, it just makes you smile. It
well,
just
do you
makes you
know where the name came from?
I don't.
We found an essay that Nick wrote on his computer, and he wrote it when he was a freshman in college. The title of the essay was The Reality of Heaven. And he was going to Santa Barbara City College at the time. So the essay was a 5-page essay about all the different world religions and what they believe happens when people die. And he concludes in this essay that his Christian faith tells him that when he dies, he will be finally reunited with the loved ones that he's lost on earth. And he wrote, I don't believe that when I go to heaven, I expect to feel joy, gratitude, and excitement. I don't believe that people should say, rest in peace. Perhaps a phrase such as thrive in joy better reflects how I want to spend eternity.
Oh, ah, that is so beautiful. You're gonna make me cry, Mary. That is absolutely gorgeous. What a legacy. What a legacy Nick has left and given to so many. I mean, what that is as good as it gets. If we can all thrive in joy and we can all live like that, then amen, right? That is just beautiful. I can't think of any better way to end this except to ask you how we can volunteer, support, and help you with this beautiful work before I go look for tissue. So tell me where we can support you, follow you, volunteer, donate, all those good things.
Wonderful. Well, our website always has a donate button, several places and on every page. And that website is www.thrive, THRIVENINJOY, joy.org. So
Love that.
www.thriveinjoy.org. We post everything that we do in our schools and in the DR on Instagram. So if you wanted to get a quick history of all the things that Thrive Enjoy is doing, it's Thrive Enjoy NFF on Instagram. And on
Okay,
Facebook, it's at TJNFF.
got it.
And we're on
Awesome.
we're on LinkedIn also with it's Thrive Enjoy Nick Fagnano Foundation.
I love that.
And two things that we do every year, we have an annual baseball extravaganza at Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks on Father's Day weekend. We have some of the best travel teams in Southern California are in a tournament that weekend. We
Fine.
have a junior clinic on Saturday morning for kids who love baseball, boys and girls from ages 5 to 12. And they
Oh,
get to get a skills clinic with professional baseball coaches and play on the beautiful Notre Dame field.
Awesome.
It's an incredible stadium, and we're so grateful to Notre Dame High School for allowing us to have this event there every year. And then the last Monday in July is our annual celebration of Next Life, Love, and Legacy.
Mm.
And we do that at Driftwood Beach in Venice. It was where Nick spent the last day of his life in joy. And we bring together anyone who wants to be or is part of the Thrive and Joy community. We
Aw.
just ask people to go onto our website. Starting around June, we post a RSVP link, and we just ask people to tell us that they're going to be there. It's no cost to attend. We just really want people to see. We bring all the students who are involved in our program. We have some of them talk about the impact it's had on their life, and just people to meet and to continue to grow our community the way that Nick would, I know, be growing his community, or the way he is.
He is growing his community 100%. Well, Mary, I have absolutely loved our conversation. I'm so grateful for you for sharing your beautiful story. I'm so inspired by what a legacy you have built. I mean, just what a beautiful, beautiful legacy that is obviously going to go on and on with all of these incredible children that you're impacting. So, thank you for sharing that with us. And I hope everyone listening is going on minimum to Instagram and social media and following you and your beautiful journey and your work and supporting you. And I just can't thank you enough.
Heidi, thank you. It's just been a pleasure speaking with you today. And I love what you're doing and spreading this word about Thrive and Joy, but all the nonprofits that, your life is touching, and just what amazing woman your mom
Oh,
was
thank
to
you.
for you to be her daughter.
Thank you. Thank you for blessing me with that. It really I'm trying to help the helpers. That's my goal. If I can help the helpers, then we can multiply, and so much good is coming out of all of the work and the wonderful people I get to meet like you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And that is Charity Matters. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Charity Matters podcast. I really enjoyed talking to our guest, Mary Fagnano, about what it takes to start a business that truly changes people's lives. I think her comment about never taking a day for granted was so inspiring and true. To learn more about these modern day heroes, or if you'd like to reach out to us, reach out and visit charity-matters.com or connect with us on Instagram at Charity Matters. If you enjoyed our conversation, we would love it if you shared this with your family and friends. And please don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It is the greatest gift. But more than that, thank you for caring, for believing in goodness, and being part of our movement to change for good. You are exactly what the world needs more of. And remember that together, we can make a difference, one small act of kindness at a time. Charity matters.